okay? I used to work the night shift at a small hotel, and this happened about a year ago, okay? But I still think about it all the time because it genuinely scared me so much. I don't know what the man's plan was or what he was trying to do. Honestly, it makes me feel sick when I remember how long he was there and that I didn't even realize he wasn't supposed to be. The hotel was small, just 3 floors, maybe around 40 rooms in total. It wasn't a busy place. Usually, we had about 10 to 15 rooms occupied on weeknights. I worked from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. Most nights were really quiet and boring, which suited me fine. I'd sit behind the desk, do some paperwork, sometimes check the cameras, or occasionally watch YouTube on my phone, if it was dead quiet. The lobby wasn't large, just the desk, a few couches on the side with a TV, and some vending machines in the corner. Behind the desk, there was a small office with a computer, a chair, and a glass window that let me see the lobby while sitting there. At night, the front doors locked automatically, so guests had to press a button to get in, and I'd press a button to let them in. Usually, nothing happened after midnight, except the occasional late guest. But one night, a man came in around 11 p.m., and everything about him still makes my stomach churn when I think about it. He pressed the button, and I let him in. He looked to be in his mid-40s, tall, somewhat slim, but not too thin. He wore jeans, a baseball cap, and carried a backpack. He walked up to the desk and asked if we had a room for the night. I said yes and told him the rate. He nodded and swiped a card. It went through successfully, and I handed him a key for room 214 on the 2nd floor. I remember he looked at me for a second that felt way too long before leaving. He had a kind of blank expression, and his eyes stayed on me for maybe 3 or 4 seconds after I handed him the key. Then he turned and walked toward the elevator. There was nothing about his appearance that screamed danger immediately, but it was enough to catch my attention. I went back to my chair and played on my phone for a while. Around midnight, I looked up and saw him back in the lobby. He didn't come to the desk. He just walked past me and sat in the lounge area by the couches. The TV wasn't on, but he sat facing it. I thought maybe he couldn't sleep or something. Some guests sometimes hang out in the lobby, so I didn't think much of it. But after half an hour, I realized he was literally just sitting there doing nothing. He wasn't on his phone or reading. He wasn't even dozing off. He was staring straight at the blank screen. I got up for a moment to get water from the vending machine. As I crossed the lobby, I felt like he had turned his head and was watching me the whole way. I didn't look at him directly, but I felt his eyes on me until I got back behind the desk. It made me feel really uneasy. Around 1 a.m., I was checking the reservation system on the computer because I was bored. That's when I noticed something strange. I opened the list of occupied rooms and saw that room 214 was listed as vacant. I muttered something under my breath and checked again because I had literally met this man an hour ago. I thought maybe I was mistaken. I checked the check-in records. No name, no charges, nothing. Then I went into the transaction screen to confirm the card had worked earlier, but it showed no payments. I remember feeling extremely confused because I swear I had swiped his card and the machine had beeped as if it went through, but there was nothing in the system at all. I picked up the phone and called room 214. The phone rang about 10 times, no answer. Then I checked the keycard log, which shows if the room was opened that night. Nothing. No one had entered the room. That's when I realized he hadn't even gone to the room after I gave him the key. I looked toward the lounge and saw him still sitting there, staring at the TV that wasn't even on. A terrible feeling grew in my chest. I sat there, hesitating, wondering what to do. Part of me thought maybe the system had glitched, but the fact that the room showed no entry and no charges made it clear he wasn't registered at all. I waited another 15 minutes, watching him. Around 1:30 a.m., I walked over and asked if everything was okay. He turned his head and looked at me blankly, saying he just couldn't sleep. Then he returned to face the TV. I nodded and went back behind my desk, but my hands were shaking. Around 2 a.m., I noticed he wasn't in the lounge anymore. My stomach dropped immediately because I hadn't seen him anywhere in the lobby. Scanned the area and then saw him standing at the end of the hallway near the bathrooms, half hidden in the shadows. He stood there, motionless. I kept glancing at him while pretending to be busy on the computer. He stayed there for a while, then slowly walked back and sat in the lounge as if nothing had happened. I called my manager at home and explained what was happening. She sounded tired and just told me to keep an eye on him and called the police if he did anything threatening. I remember commenting that he already seemed threatening, but I didn't know what to do. I reviewed the security cameras afterward. I saw him in the first floor hallway, walking back and forth, stopping at the end, standing for several minutes, then walking back. Later, he went into the stairwell and stayed there for about 10 minutes. I have no idea what he was doing there. Every time I looked away from the computer, he was somewhere else, near the vending machines or the elevators. At one point, he stood at a lobby corner where the light didn't reach well. He was always staring. By 3:30 a.m., I couldn't take it anymore. I called the non-emergency police number and explained there was a man in the hotel who I didn't think was a guest. They said they'd send someone. While waiting, I noticed him move again, this time closer to the desk. He stood maybe 15 feet away, watching me. He didn't blink much, and he certainly didn't speak. He just stared like he had a staring problem. I pretended to type something on the computer, but I was so scared I could barely breathe. Around 3:50 a.m., the buzzer rang. I thought maybe the police had arrived, but it was another late guest. I let him in quickly, and the man turned his head, watching the guest with his eyes until he entered. That scared me even more, because it was like he was studying him. A few minutes later, the man disappeared again. I checked the cameras and saw him standing outside a guest room door on the first floor. He was literally just standing there. I called 911 and told them he was outside a guest room door, and I didn't know what he was trying to do. They said they'd send officers. I kept my eyes on the camera screen. He stood at the door for about 3 minutes, then slowly walked back to the lobby. When he returned, he walked straight to the desk and leaned over the counter. He asked if there was any food. His voice was low in a creepy way. I told him there were vending machines in the corner. He gave a small smile and walked away. I sat watching the clock, praying the police would arrive. Finally, around 4:10 a.m., 2 officers arrived, let them in, and pointed directly at him. He was sitting in the lounge again. They walked up to him and spoke with him for a few minutes, asking for ID and questions I couldn't hear. Then they took him out. One officer came back and explained that the man wasn't a guest at all. The card he gave me was stolen, and he had no luggage or reservation. They arrested him for trespassing and using a stolen card. After they left, I sat shaking until my shift ended. But every time I looked at the cameras, I expected to see him again, okay? What bothered me the most was realizing he had been inside the hotel for hours, wandering around and standing outside guest rooms, watching me from different spots. He was never supposed to be there. I don't know what his plan was, but I know it wasn't good. That was the worst night of my life.
Story: The Cursed Package. The clock was nearing midnight when silence fell over the quiet suburban neighborhood. Houses lined both sides of the street, porch lights switched off, cars parked neatly in driveways as if the entire town had sunk into a deep sleep. At that moment, the low hum of a car engine broke the stillness. A small vehicle rolled into the neighborhood and stopped quietly at the edge of the street. Nobody noticed its arrival, but a security camera mounted on one of the houses captured everything. A man stepped out. He wore an all-white tracksuit, hood pulled up over his head, and a black mask covering half his face. In his right hand, he carried a cardboard box. Walking cautiously, as if he knew exactly where he was headed, he approached a house on the corner. A medium-sized home with a shiny black SUV parked out front. The man walked straight up to the front door, standing there with tense posture. He adjusted the box in his hands, trying to look normal, but his eyes barely visible behind the mask shifted nervously. He pressed the doorbell. No answer. He pressed it again, waiting still. Then something stirred inside. The faint sound of movement. The door creaked open slowly. At first, no one appeared, just a long shadow stretching across the floor. But within seconds, a massive figure stepped out, a towering, muscular man, bare-chested with veins rippling across stone-like muscles. He held a black baseball bat resting on his shoulder, his face locked in a grim scowl, eyes glowing with anger. He stopped at the threshold, glaring at the hooded stranger. His voice was low but menacing. "What are you doing at my door at this hour?" The hooded man froze, stumbling over his words. I have a delivery for you." The giant raised an eyebrow, then gave a cold, unsettling smile. "A delivery? At midnight? Who sent it?" The hooded man hesitated, stammering, I was just told to leave it here." The muscular man stepped closer, eyes narrowing. He bent slightly, staring at the box. It was sealed tight, but etched into one side was a strange symbol carved into the cardboard, as if with a knife. The man's face froze. He straightened, gripping the bat tightly. "Who gave this to you?" The hooded stranger's voice trembled. "I swear, I don't know. They just told me to bring it here." Suddenly, the box began to shake, violently. The man in white dropped it in shock, stumbling backward. The giant stepped away too, his eyes widening in alarm. The box creaked open on its own, slowly, painfully. Thick black smoke poured out, swirling into the night like a living fog. Faint whispers filled the air, voices speaking in an unholy tongue, heavy with menace. The hooded man screamed, "I didn't know. I swear I didn't know." But the muscular man stood his ground. His grip on the bat tightened, his chest rising and falling as if bracing for what was coming. From the smoke, a long shadowy hand emerged, formed of pure darkness. It shot forward, seizing the hooded man's leg. He fell hard, clawing at the concrete, screaming. The smoky hand pulled him toward the box with terrifying strength. He kicked and fought, but it was useless. In seconds, he was swallowed whole by the darkness. His screams faded, leaving only silence. The box shut itself, the smoke vanished. Everything was still again. The giant man remained frozen, breathing heavily. Slowly, he approached the box, crouching beside it. His eyes lingered on the strange carved symbol. He ran his fingers over it and muttered under his breath, "They've finally found me." He lifted the box with ease, carrying it into the house. The door closed behind him. The street fell silent once more, but the security camera caught one last chilling detail. From an upstairs window, another figure watched. A tall human-like silhouette with glowing red eyes, staring into the night. Who was the giant? What was inside the cursed package?
The Silent Doll's House. In a forgotten suburb on the outskirts of a crumbling old city, stood a mansion so sinister that even the bravest dared not approach it. Locals called it the Silent Doll's House. For more than 30 years, the property had been abandoned, swallowed by weeds and darkness. Legends clung to it like cobwebs, strange lights flickering in its windows despite having no power, whispers of children's cries carried on the wind, and silhouettes lurking behind curtains, watching passers-by. Layla, a young woman with a passion for photography and urban exploration, had heard of the mansion from her grandmother. The old woman's face had gone pale at its mention, and she had warned Layla with trembling hands never to go near it. But Layla wasn't easily scared. She had filmed abandoned schools, underground tunnels, even decrepit hospitals rumored to be haunted. The mansion, she thought, would be her ultimate triumph, a viral sensation. On a bitterly cold evening, she packed her camera gear, a lantern, and a crowbar, just in case, and drove toward the forgotten neighborhood. The deeper she drove into the night, the stranger the world felt. Streetlights flickered out one by one as she passed, and fog curled low over the cracked asphalt roads. Finally, she arrived. The mansion loomed like a corpse of architecture, its towering frame skeletal, its paint stripped away, and its windows shattered like blind eyes. The rusted iron gates groaned in protest as she pushed them open, their screech cutting through the silence like a scream. She crossed the yard, crunching over brittle weeds. The air smelled of rot and stagnant water. The house seemed to watch her, its broken shutters swinging softly in the cold wind. Layla approached the large wooden door. Its red paint had peeled to reveal grey, splintered wood beneath. She knocked. The sound echoed unnaturally, like knocking on an empty coffin. Taking a deep breath, she pushed it open. The door groaned, revealing a hallway swallowed in darkness. Dust motes floated in the air like ashes. The smell was overpowering. Dampness, mold, and something metallic like dried blood. She stepped inside, her lantern beam cutting through the gloom, and the door slammed shut behind her. She froze, heart pounding. The echo of the door reverberated unnaturally, as though the house itself was sighing. Shaking off the unease, she began recording. The hallway stretched endlessly, lined with crooked picture frames and faded wallpaper peeling in curls. The floorboards creaked beneath her boots. She stopped when she noticed something on a shelf at the end of the corridor. A porcelain doll. It was small, dressed in a delicate white gown yellowed with age. Its glass eyes, gleaming in the lantern light, stared straight into her soul. Layla chuckled nervously. "Is this the famous haunted doll?" she whispered, her voice barely audible over the sound of her own heartbeat. She reached out and picked it up. The doll's cracked eyelid made one glassy eye appear to wander. Without thinking, she slipped it into her bag, a trophy. But as soon as she turned away, the air seemed to grow heavier. Her skin prickled. She swore she heard soft breathing behind her. Then came a giggle, a faint, childlike laugh drifting from above. Her breath hitched. She spun around, shining her lantern up the staircase, but saw only darkness. "Hello!" she called out, her voice trembling. No reply. Against her better judgment, she climbed the stairs. Each step groaned like a dying animal. The second floor was freezing, her breath visible in the beam of her lantern. She reached a hallway lined with closed doors. She opened the first door. Inside was a nursery, frozen in time, a small bed with shredded blankets, a rocking horse with one missing eye, and walls covered in crayon drawings of stick figures. None of the figures had faces. Suddenly, the door slammed behind her. She jumped, spinning around. The doorknob wouldn't turn. Something scraped against the floor. She turned back. A headless teddy bear had slid across the room, as if pushed by unseen hands. Layla yanked the door with all her strength and it burst open. She bolted down the hallway, heart hammering. But the hall seemed endless. She ran and ran, yet the doors all looked the same. Then faint footsteps echoed behind her. She turned. A small figure stood at the far end of the hall. It was a child, its head bowed, its face obscured in shadow. "Give it back," the child whispered. Layla's voice trembled. "Give what back?" But the figure vanished. A door creaked open at the end of the hallway, revealing a staircase descending into pitch blackness. Something cold brushed her back, urging her forward. Against her instincts, she descended. The basement was suffocating. The air smelled of mildew and something sickly sweet like rotting flowers. She swept her lantern around and froze. Hundreds of porcelain dolls lined the shelves. Each one wore tattered antique dresses. Some had missing limbs. Others had hair made from real human strands, yellowed with age. Their glass eyes reflected her light, following her. She crept deeper into the basement. The dolls' faces seemed to twist slightly in the flickering light, their expressions warped. Suddenly, one doll toppled from a shelf. It shattered. Inside, embedded in the shards, was a human tooth. Layla gagged. She stumbled back, and then she heard breathing. Heavy, raspy breathing behind her. She turned. A woman stood there. She wore a tattered white gown stained with something dark. Her hair was long, black and tangled, covering half her face. Her other eye glowed red like a burning coal. "Give me back my doll," she rasped, her voice like nails dragging across glass. Layla's blood ran cold. She tore open her bag to retrieve the doll, but her bag was empty. The doll was gone. Suddenly, icy fingers clamped around her throat. She choked, clawing at her neck as the woman lifted her slightly off the ground. The dolls around them began to move, heads turning, limbs twitching. Their eyes glowed red. A chorus of children's laughter filled the basement, overlapping into a deafening cacophony. The spirit's face twisted into a grotesque smile as she whispered in Layla's ear, "You'll join my collection." Layla tried to scream, but no sound came out. The dolls slid from their shelves and crawled toward her on tiny hands and feet. Their porcelain faces cracked open, revealing jagged teeth. The ghost pressed her icy palm to Layla's face. Her skin burned like frostbite. Darkness swallowed her vision. Weeks later, the mansion remained silent. Layla's camera was found lying just outside the rusted gate. Police reviewed the footage. The last clip showed Layla screaming silently, surrounded by moving dolls. The audio was distorted, filled with high-pitched giggles and whispers. Her voice was never heard again. Locals say that at night, if you pass the mansion, you'll see her standing in the upstairs window, clutching a porcelain doll. Her face is pale and her eyes are hollow, but she watches every passerby, silently waiting for someone foolish enough to enter. Those who linger too long swear they hear her whisper, "Give it back." And then, sometimes, the gates creak open on their own.